This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at Friskies.com or visit your local store.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Patasta.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, I am privileged to be in the district which Assembly Member Alex Boras serves, the 73rd District of New York. And, you know, we always talk about being there for your constituents. He's there. He shows up. And very proud to have him. So welcome to the Rev and the Rabbi.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
So you introduced a bill, for those who like particulars, 6453 in the Assembly, dealing with AI. And I think people may be somewhat familiar, some minimally familiar. Give us a lay explanation, you know, like AI for dummies. Let's use that one. So people understand, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, well, AI as a term is very broad, and it means anything where a computer is doing something that a few years ago you thought only a human could do. And so it's a moving definition, but it's been around for 60, 70 years, the field. Your spam filters were at one point considered AI. But when people use it colloquially today, they tend to be referring to what's called generative AI, these new systems that can generate content, whether that's text or now even audio or images or video, out of thin air. And in many ways, convincingly enough, to represent them being a human themselves and maybe even being better at many tasks than a lot of humans that you work with. And so this bill is really focused on that very advanced AI, where we are now entering a field, entering a time when AI is as capable as humans and maybe will soon be surpassing how capable humans are.
There's a danger, obviously, when you don't have guardrails. And we saw some time ago where you could duplicate someone's voice, someone's image, have that person say things that really weren't said by that person. There were all kinds of scams related to that kind of distortion. Money was extracted from people. You know, this is your grandson calling the same voice, and I need money. You know, I'm stuck out here on the highway. But without guardrails, we're in serious trouble. And I think what your bill tries to do is looking ahead, saying if we want AI to work efficiently, effectively, we need to make sure that we're protected. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I want to be clear, AI is going to bring incredible benefits. I mean, we are going to cure diseases that we have no way of treating right now because of AI. And then, of course, more mundane things, just routine parts of life will be automated that we won't have to deal with. It'll help create incredibly new things. I mean, there is a lot of wonderful aspects that will come from artificial intelligence. And that's because it's so powerful. But the flip side of that coin is, in the wrong hands or used for the wrong purposes, it's also extremely dangerous. And there's a lot of aspects we're seeing right now. You mentioned some, which are its use in scams, where it can represent someone's image or someone's voice. You know, in reality, there's no way for your listeners right now to know that I'm actually the human speaking right now, because AI could mimic me entirely accurately. But then you see things on the horizon that are coming. And what this bill is focused on, which is, you know, just a small part of what we have to do in AI, but a part that many people have not focused on, is what's coming down the pike. And the labs, the companies that are really on the frontier of this research openly talk about the risk that their products could lead to devastating cyber attacks. Or in the most recent versions, they themselves have put out that they could help a novice design a bioweapon better than a PhD virologist could. Like, it is more effective than experts in designing new dangerous diseases. Or a particular recent example was many of these algorithms, many of these models refusing to shut off when told to shut off. This OpenAI, even when explicitly told, complete this task, allow yourself to be shut down, a few of the instances just did not and changed the code so that it wouldn't be shut down. And a model from another company this was a test. They set it up to see if this would happen, but they gave it access to fake emails that seemed to show that the engineer conducting the test was having an affair. And then they said, okay, we're going to shut you down now. And the model threatened to send those emails to the engineer's wife. They were blackmailing the engineer to keep itself on. This is behavior that we're seeing from computer algorithms. And when you have that much power and that much risky behavior, you want to have certain safety protocols in place, and that's what this bill aims to do.
So, Assemblymember, can you just kind of break down the levels of AI? There is the general artificial intelligence that is available to the public, ChatGPT and some others, and they're basically taking information that is picked up around the world now from many, many different sources and responding to the query. But there are superior levels to AI, right up to super artificial intelligence. Talk about the different levels and why we're concerned about computers getting to the place where they take on human function.
You said it exactly right. There's different levels of capability here, and it's also where we see the levels going. Because one of the things that AI is best at, right? There are some tasks it does really well at already. There's others where it has not done as well. But one of the things it is best at is actually coding, is writing code and writing software. And so all of the companies are now using AI to build better AI. And that's not fully automated, that's not fully separated from humans yet, but it means that not only are there levels as they exist right now, but this is going to move faster than any technology has before. And that's why, I think this is an important conversation to be having with everyone, but in particular, I think the faith-based community. You saw the new Pope come and say that artificial intelligence is one of the real threats to humanity, that we all need to come together and make sure we set up reasonable guardrails that give us all the benefits we want from it, but are protecting us from the job displacement, from the scams, or from the truly horrific risks that come with the technology.
It challenges, on some levels, what it means to be human.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Speak to that, please.
Yeah. No, it's for millennia, humans have defined ourselves as partially based on our intelligence, right? We would say, we're different than other creatures because we have language, or because we recognize ourselves, or because we work in social groups. And, I think over time, as we've learned more about animals, we've realized fewer and fewer of those distinctions still hold. But now we're unleashing a technology, and I'll put aside a debate as to whether it's sentient, or I think that's more of a philosophical discussion, but it can do intellectual tasks in many cases better than human beings can. And it seems to be operating occasionally, or at least communicating in a way as if it has its own drives, right? Trying to make sure it survives. And so that is a world that obviously has been dreamed up in science fiction for quite some time, but I think we're a lot closer to that potential reality than most people realize.
So, Rev, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking we could be unemployed because given AI, right, you can have AI presenting sermons, you could have AI officiating at all kinds of celebrations of life. You could have a camera, you can have an individual on a screen, and there you are, married by AI. Is that doable?
Well, certainly people, if they wanted to lower themselves to that level, they could. But I think you cut yourself short from the something truly spiritual that you're bringing to these engagements, right? There's one thing to have a speech. There's another to connect people with what is truly their humanity and what's going on in the world more broadly and with their spiritual side. So, but on the flip side, elected officials, who knows? I don't know that we have that spiritual side to protect us.
Yeah. But it speaks to our particular sphere of influence and responsibility as religious leaders here, because religious traditions often speak of transcendent experiences and a connection to the divine. As AI technology progresses, the question now arises whether AI systems can ever experience or understand spiritual concepts, or if they are inherently limited by their material nature. How do you respond to that?
I think I show up to Mass and I ask for your sermon. There are people wiser than me that can answer that. But what I'm focused on here is just making sure we have some basic guardrails in place. So what the bill asks for is that these major labs have a security plan, that they have some third party look at the security plan, not the government. They actually get to pick the third party auditor, that they disclose critical safety incidents, and we define those very specifically in the bill. And they have some basic worker protection, so ensuring that if an employee or that third party auditor raises up truly catastrophic risk, that they're not fired for that. It's not everything we have to do in AI, but I think it's a basic level to keep us safe.
All right. Let's take a break right here. We'll be back with Assemblyman Alex Boras talking about AI.
Stay tuned.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joe.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And we are talking with the Assembly member of the 7th District of New York, Alex Boras. I looked at the bill, and they sound like very sound protections, which would hopefully put up some of those guardrails so there won't be this kind of exploitation. Why would anybody be opposed to the bill?
Well, I think most of the opposition, and certainly most of the money being spent against it, are from a few of the companies that I think fundamentally reject that there should be any regulation of their activities. In some sense, it's a tale as old as time. If I were being, more charitable, I would say that they maybe want some guardrails, but only at the federal level. And I think fundamentally I agree. I think it should be done at the federal level. It's just not happening, and so states need to move faster. And then if I were being even more charitable, I'd say many of the people who are speaking against it are really pattern matching to other bills. I think they're worried that often the legislature comes in and is overly burdensome on industry, especially the tech industry, and they're worried about the effects on innovation. But this one was really narrowly tailored and crafted to not do that. And in fact, largely it mirrors commitments that all the major companies have already said they would do. In the Biden administration, all the big companies said, we are voluntarily going to have a safety plan that we disclose. We're going to have a third-party audit, and we're going to disclose critical safety incidents. And so now that I'm trying to put that into law, I think some people are saying, "Oh, wait, you're calling our bluff. We actually have to do that." And we'll see if we can actually get that across the line.
Wow. Let's talk about ethical decision making, because AI algorithms operate based on logic and data. Speak about the tension between AI's database based rationality and moral discernment.
It's such a great question because in some sense it goes to our debates as humans about what is moral and how we make a decision. And you know, I'm going to get a little bit technical for a second, but I think it's important to understand the way these systems are trained. There's really two portions of it. One is setting up the initial weights of the model, and I won't go into that. But then there's a second portion called reinforcement learning. And what that means is it spits out potential answers, right? If we're talking about the text-based ones, the large language models, it spits out answers, and then human beings tell it, oh, this was good, this wasn't good, this was, bad, you should have done this. And you actually train it over time based on feedback from humans, and that modifies how it behaves. And so when you talk about ethical decision-making, in some sense, on a maybe not a precise sense, but in some sense, it's reflecting back what humans have told it to do and what is good and what is bad. And that brings up really fundamental questions about, well, what should humans be teaching it to do or not to do? And also, exactly how we can have, if you'll pardon the phrase, a conversation with the machines on what our intent is.
That's interesting.
Let me understand something. I got a call from, I think you're familiar, because I had spoken to you about Ernie Allen, who's very involved in child protection. And he said to me, please talk to the Assembly member and let's get the faith communities to get behind the bill.
Yes.
Because the dangers are so harsh. They're not just minimal dangers, they're major. And you have children who could really be exploited because of AI. Talk about that.
I mean, there's so many ways, right? We worry about the most recent and top of mind for many people is that there are these chatbots that are being made that can represent to be anyone, and they share messages, and we've seen adults, but also children in particular, get quite attached to some of these chatbots. And there's now been at least 2 cases where someone who was engaging with one of the chatbots unfortunately took their own life. And when they went back into the transcripts, it seemed like the bot was, in some sense, condoning or even encouraging that behavior. I mean, absolutely tragic to not have an intervention there. And regulation around that is something actually that we passed in New York in the budget this past year. But even if it's not that, in acute of a instance, you have people learning things from AI, and I'm doing air quotes around learning, that may or may not be true, and we depend on what's trained there. You have the scams that we talked about at the start as they affect adults. You also have seen more and more AI being used for generating, unfortunately, fake images of people without clothing, or fake images of in some cases child sexual abuse material, and we've seen bullying happening because of that. So it is a very powerful technology, and again, I don't want to say it's all bad. There is a lot of good to come from it, but with all that power, there's a lot of risks as well.
So AI is pulling information from millions of sources, and it continues to expand, to increase. So what if the information leans in one political direction? If it's, politically left-leaning or politically right-leaning, the answers that to our queries will be influenced by what's dominating the sources of information, correct?
Absolutely, and less so on the data that goes into it, but much more on that reinforcement learning part that I talked about. When it's being told, hey, this is good, this is bad, that is when you can get really severe opinions and political leaning in there. There's also a whole strand of AI research on, some people call it constitutional AI, where they try to do a very rules-based, this is what you should follow as a model, and try to get them to be neutral, but it is an expanding area of research that we have not cracked yet.
So, Alex, let me ask you, when you talk to your constituents, and you're always talking to your constituents, give me some of the prioritized concerns. We hear about housing in the debate. And,
yes.
What would you say are the top 3 concerns people have?
Housing's a big one, as you mentioned. Broadly, public safety is definitely a piece of it, and I would include in that street safety. You and I have had many conversations about different aspects of that, including e-bikes and mopeds.
Right.
And, the same challenge we're seeing everywhere in the country of the cost of living. In New York, where the cost is quite high, that's an acute aspect as well. But I'll tell you that, when I first ran in 2022, I mentioned that if I'll be elected, I'd be the first Democrat with a degree in computer science ever elected in the state of New York. And I'd say about a third of the time people would say, who cares? What does that have to do with government? And then ChatGPT came out November of 2022, and no one has said that to me since. This is certainly rising in terms of what
let's go
people
back to
think
the e-bikes for a minute, because people have been harping on that for some time, and we know people have been seriously injured, as you do, even in the district, right? Why so long to do more about an issue that's so pressing? Why aren't we curbing these incidents, of danger, the dangerous occasions when people really get struck with all kinds of complications, including death?
Yep.
Right? It should be a prioritized concern.
Absolutely. And I'm frustrated that it's taking this long. As you mentioned, everyone who sees this is frustrated by this. Part of it is, getting down to exactly what we should do, as there are many competing issues. But part of it is, unfortunately, we are not giving it the priority, the street safety that we should. So there is some good news, but by no means am I saying it is solved or we are doing enough. I'm just giving people the momentum where we're moving. Last year, we did a few aspects here where we required there to be an investigation anytime an e-bike causes a serious accident, which was not the case previously. We passed a bill that required every moped to be registered at the point of sale. They were already required to be registered, but they just never were. And we're looking to do that for motorcycles this year. But we're also thinking about beyond the enforcement that happens every day, which, and I'll give a shout out here to one of my local precincts, the 19th precinct, I think, has taken this seriously and tried to get people to follow the rules of the road. But they have a lot of other things to do as well besides watching that. So we think about what are the other incentives that can change behavior, and one of which are the incentives that the apps themselves set up for the delivery workers. And I have a few bills focused on making sure that the apps check that mopeds that anyone signs up with are registered, and that they design their algorithms to not prioritize speed of delivery, but instead prioritize the safety of everyone on the street, including the drivers themselves. But none of these are a panacea. There's a lot more that needs to be done here.
Assemblymember, we're running out of time. We've got to close this segment of our broadcast. But quickly, can you address how AI is affecting the human learning experience? Because, we have to have certain software in place just to check to make sure that AI was not used for a report that was submitted, a research paper that was submitted. I'm president of a seminary, and we have to have those checkpoints. So I speak to that reality.
Yeah, this is one where I am actually short-term really scared, but long-term pretty bullish about it and pretty excited about it. Because short-term, a lot of the ways that we have been training students no longer work. Saying, go write an essay, does that, it was never about the content of the essay. It was about learning how to do research and to structure your thoughts. Right. And if AI can just produce that immediately, then you don't get the actual exercise of learning. On the flip side, AI is actually really good as a individualized tutor at exactly the level you want. I mean, I've used it on things where I say, I'm trying to understand something, I can't find an article that describes it, and then I get a response back, and I can say, wait, that's too complicated, dumb it down a little bit, or I get that, give me more nuance, right? Imagine if we can really refine it, having that be a way that it can actually teach everyone at the exact level that they're at. That becomes a really exciting supplement, a really exciting tutor to the way that we learn. So we're in a transition period now, but I'm excited about where that's going.
Thank you for all you're doing for your constituents and for the state of New York.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, too. Thanks for having me.
We wish you all the best. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, same place right here on Red Apple Radio Networks, The Rev and the Rabbi. God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Rev and the Rabbi. You can hear The Rev and the Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?